Hey, folks. So I'm going to pick up where we left off. We were just talking about Christianity and the Roman Empire, and actually how it started as this really small religion in following the teachings of one man, named Jesus, how it grew into today the most popular religion in the world. And that wasn't just like a snap your finger, magic overnight process, but it happened over hundreds, thousands of years. So we're going to look at a period of time where Christianity really thrived and became really powerful, especially in one part of the world. So that's the Middle Ages. When you guys see the Middle Ages, a lot of people think kings, queens, castles, knights. All that is true, and we'll get to all that. But the first thing we're going to look at is in Europe, the Middle Ages, religion is probably the most important factor in most people's lives. So, what was it like? Well, in Europe, France, Germany, um, Spain, all these other countries, I could keep listing them. It's Christianity was a primary religion because these had all been parts of the Roman Empire. Christianity was started in Rome. We know that Christianity faced a lot of persecution at first, but then emperors like Constantine, promoted it. It became very popular. And we know that Rome came to a very chaotic and violent end. There wasn't a whole lot of structure except for in the church, okay, among Christians. So, for example, we've got this map here. All these different color lines are different groups attacking Rome. And so, this western half over here, we know falls apart. Not a lot of consistency, not a lot of structure, a lot of violence, a lot of chaos. But there's a group that survives. There's a group that continues on with some kind of organization, some kind of structure, and that's Christianity. Okay? Survived the invasions. In fact, some of the invaders actually at this point were Christians because they had converted before Rome had fallen apart. Okay? So, what helped it survive all that chaos was its structure, how it was organized. So, it was structured very much like the Roman Empire, where it was kind of top down. There was one uh, kind of central leader at the top. In ancient Rome, it was the emperor in charge of everybody else, and there was different levels of administrators, magistrates to help. Same thing in the church. At this point, we call it the Roman Catholic Church, which still exists today, but that was the only kind of church at that point, at least in Western Rome. Why there are so many types today, we'll talk about that later this year. But at this point, in the western half of Rome, we've got the Roman Catholic Church. At the top, we got the Pope. He's the leader. And then we have cardinals, archbishops, bishops, priests, monks, nuns. And kind of the top, you're in charge of all of Christianity, okay, all the churches, and then kind of carved up into territories. Um, and then you get down towards specific cities, specific churches, okay, different job responsibilities. All right, so here's maybe a more visual aspect. We've got Pope up here at the top, overseeing the Roman Catholic Church. And then each level, these guys are acting as assistants. They're overseeing different regions, different areas within the different kingdoms that are popping up in what used to be Rome, down to these priests who are kind of leading individual churches. And we'll talk about these monks and nuns later. All right. So, what's the big deal? Okay, why did it survive? Uh, the organization helped, but also how helpful the church was to average people when war was happening, famine, disease, chaos was happening. The church really did help individuals. First off, your daily life usually revolved around it. Uh, you'd go, maybe a couple times a week to your church service to pray, maybe to sing, hear your priest talk, read from the Bible. You're also, the churches are running the hospitals. They're providing food and shelter if you're traveling. Okay? Priests are there to record the births. Okay, if people perform marriages, uh, somebody dies, they're conducting the funeral. So we have some monks here taking care of sick people in a monastery church. So each church had a different title than maybe you recognize it. You know, if you are Christian, Roman Catholic, maybe you still use this word parish, but maybe not. But a parish is another word for church, and the leader of a specific church or parish was a priest. Okay? You group a couple of those together. You know, you've got what's known as a diocese, and a bishop is going to be in charge of that, overlooking a couple different churches. Um, then, when you have major cities with lots of different churches in it, you might have an archbishop who looks over all of those. And then over time, the biggest city was Rome, and the Archbishop of Rome uh, had more control and power, and that person became the Pope. Okay, kind of think of it like a school. You've got a classroom, which is like your parish, teachers like the priest. Then you got your school, right, with a lot of classrooms. That's your bishop. That's the diocese is the school. Then you've got the archbishop who's in charge of all the schools. That's like your superintendent. And then eventually, you know, you have somebody bigger than that, maybe the governor, okay, in charge of Department of Education in Pennsylvania, right? Something like that. All right. All right. So here we have the Pope. Actually, we'll see this happen a couple times. Is going to be gaining a lot of power, sometimes even more power than some of these kings in these kingdoms. So that'll be interesting to see. All right. So what kind of power did these popes have? Right. So they are the one rule of the Catholic Church. Okay. They often would give a lot of advice to kings. Okay. Not only spiritual advice, but also advice in politics. Um, your role was to obey the king's law unless it went against the church law or something from the Bible. And then your obligation was to obey the Pope. Um, if you did go against the Pope, disobeyed church law, biblical law, you could be what's called excommunicated or banned from the Catholic Church, kicked out. You might say, who cares? Bad news. It's the only type of church in Western Europe. And remember, they're running the hospitals. They are helping travelers. They're helping the sick. They're helping the poor and the needy. And eventually we'll see they're the ones running the schools. So they're really helping people. You get excommunicated, that's a problem. Another thing that was bad is if you had made any oaths or promises with people and you were excommunicated, they were no longer required to uphold their end of the oath. They could break the deal and nothing you could do about it. All right, so education. Most people back then could not read or write. To be honest with you, there's lots of war and chaos. I probably wouldn't make it to school either. I'd be just trying to survive, work on the farm, protect myself, go to war, something like that. So most people not reading and writing. Um, if you were rich, you could hire servants. Maybe you could hire protection. Maybe you would send your son, okay, to school, pay for private school. And a lot of these schools were in churches, monasteries, places like that, where religious leaders were teaching your kids how to read and to write. And a lot of times that was using the Bible. And some of these monks or people who worked in these churches also on their spare time worked copying and making translations of the Bible, which is really difficult and took a long time. They didn't have printers. So it was word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, page by page to make a brand new Bible. Okay. So it was before they had printers, anything like that. Right. But having said that, then they could add in lots of cool artwork, okay, designs to kind of add some artistic flair to it. All right. So, folks, we'll stop there. We'll do Vikings another day. But that is kind of how the church maintained its structure, gained some more power and relevancy when all that other chaos was going on, and how the church helped people in their day-to-day lives.